When the lights shifted and the music softened, the whole room went silent. Not for the vows, not for the kiss, but because the bride's dress started to tell a story no one in that ballroom expected to hear. I stood 3 rows back, my hands wrapped around a cool glass of water, and I watched it happen the way you watch a storm roll in slow and sure. The first flash went off, then another, and with each burst of light, something hidden came alive on the silk, an invisible pattern surfacing like a secret written in moonlight. Heads turned, mouths opened. My own breath snagged, not because I was surprised, but because this was the moment I'd been waiting for. A few hours earlier, the same bride had tilted her chin, looked at me up and down, and laughed in front of a cluster of her friends. "Bold choice," she said, her voice all honey and knives. "Is your dress vintage, like thrift store vintage, cute for a backyard party, less cute for this?" Her eyes swept over my simple slate blue dress, bias cut, clean lines, soft drape. It wasn't loud. It wasn't trying. It didn't need to. It was mine. I had designed it, stitched it with my own hands in a quiet apartment that still smelled like eucalyptus candles and thread wax. And she'd mocked it. She had no idea. She also had no idea that I had designed hers. If you're new here, this is where you lean in. Because tonight, at my ex-husband's wedding, to a woman who thought humiliation was a hobby, fate handed me the most satisfying canvas. Before we dive into everything that led here, do one thing for me so we can keep telling stories like this one. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Okay, back to the moment. I watched the photographer take another shot. Flash. The room dimmed, then brightened. The faintest outline of a pattern glowed across the bride's silk train, birds with spread wings, stitched in a thread that only woke up when the light hit it at a certain angle. Not everyone saw it at first, but the ones who did went still, like they were listening to a whisper. The bride glanced back, annoyed at the attention that wasn't fully hers. "What, is there something on me?" she asked, forcing a laugh. "Yes, there was a story on you, Sienna. A story I had sewn into your gown with hands that remembered every bruise a broken dream can leave behind." My heart ruled slow beats against my ribs, and even though I was smiling, soft, calm, kind, I could feel the past standing just behind me, a quiet shadow resting its chin on my shoulder. We were both watching this unfold, me and the woman I used to be, the one who once trusted the man now waiting at the altar, the one who once believed that love and loyalty were the same thing. They aren't, not always, you're about to see why. The DJ slipped into a low instrumental, guests shifted, murmuring. The room felt like a held breath. It was time for the toast, and the microphone was being passed toward the head table. But the maid of honor's eyes were already flicking between the bride's back and the curious faces. Something was happening, something unusual, something beautiful and then sharp. My palms tingled, not with fear, with choice. I could let it happen quietly and slip out of here with my dignity neatly folded. Or I could tell the truth that had been sitting under my tongue for a year, waiting for a moment that felt like sunrise. To understand why I chose what I chose, you need to know what came before. You need to know about the studio with the peeling white door, about the late nights and early mornings, about the man I married, and the way he learned to turn my art into a weapon I didn't see coming. But first, one last flash. The pattern shimmered fully now, a lattice of tiny phoenix wings laced through her train, emerging like dawn. A quiet signature with one small symbol tucked near the hem, a circle with a line through it, the mark no one knew was mine anymore. Except me. I didn't come here to burn a wedding down. I came to light a match under the truth. And if you're thinking, wait, how did she end up here? Why design a dress for the woman who laughed at her? Why come at all? That's the story. I met Ethan on a Thursday at a sample sale that ran 3 hours past closing. The kind of night when the floor smells like steaming fabric and coffee, and the last song on the playlist plays 4 times without anyone noticing because they're too tired to care. He held a garment rack still for me while I climbed a stool to reach a box. He smiled, that easy smile some men are born knowing how to use. His sleeves were rolled. His hands were the neat kind, the kind that don't chip their nails. He asked what I did. I said I was a designer. He said, "Then why are you up on a stool and not standing on a runway?" We laughed. We split a bag of almonds. He watched me sketch, curious the way a cat is curious about light. When I packed up, his card was already in my pocket. I didn't fall fast. He didn't rush me. Sunday markets turned into Tuesday dinners. The tiny studio I rented over the florist became our place to breathe, the air downstairs always sweet and damp. He'd bring me tea and listen while I talked about dart placement and bias grain, like these were the most important words in the world. When my first small trunk show sold 6 pieces in one afternoon, he spun me around right there beneath the hanging dried roses and said, "I knew it." I knew I was meeting a storm. Love makes a good story sound like a promise. He started helping emails, spreadsheets, phone calls. He had a head for numbers and a way with people that loosened their grip on money. "Let me handle operations," he'd say, touching my elbow. "You handle the art." If this is where your stomach drops, you're not wrong. But it wasn't all danger. It was winter mornings with coffee and brown paper packages. It was the way he remembered every client's name and every woman's reason for needing a dress, something for a promotion, a divorce, a new beginning. It was how he kissed me once in the middle of a fitting when a zipper finally lay flat after 18 tries, and we both felt like we'd won something invisible. We got married the year the jacarandas bloomed early. Simple ceremony, ribbon in my hair. My best friend Lara cried through the whole vow and whispered, "Yes," every time I said, "I do," like she was reminding me the world was agreeing. Ethan squeezed my hand so tight at the altar, I had to wiggle my fingers afterward to get the blood back. We danced until midnight under paper lanterns, and when we went home to the little apartment with the crooked window, he carried me over a threshold that really did squeak the way thresholds are supposed to when they're old and honest. People warned me about mixing love and business, but I believed that building something together would make us stronger, and it did at first. He would close a deal, I would draw a pattern. He would call the fabric mills, I would fit bodices with the calm patience of a nurse. We were a good team. The studio changed. The florist moved out and I took over the first floor. We painted the walls, sanded the tables, hung gold hooks for scissors so they had a home. Customers started coming because other customers had come. The email pings got faster. There was a waiting list. I still needed him then, or I thought I did. He handled the press when magazines started to care. He handled the money when I had to order bolts and bolts of silk. "We need a line," he said one day, tapping a spreadsheet. "We need a big investor so you can stop worrying and focus on the fashion. I can get it. I've got meetings next week." "Are we ready?" I asked, pulling basting threads with my teeth because my hands were too tired to hold scissors. He tucked hair behind my ear. "We were born ready." People say the small moments are the ones that tell you who someone really is. The way they talk to waiters, the way they treat your mother, the way they react when something small goes wrong. The first crack was small. I found a folder on his desktop one night, a folder full of my sketch photos and lined sheets I hadn't released. He'd labeled it Maya SS Concepts. That wasn't strange. What was strange were the dates. He'd sent them to an external email before I'd even finished the samples. "Why did you send those?" I asked, keeping my voice light like there had to be a harmless reason. He blinked quickly, the way you do when someone turns a light on. "Babe, you gave me permission. It's for the potential investor. She needs to see what you're building." I didn't remember that conversation, but I also didn't want to start a fight when the pizza delivery guy was at the door and the room smelled like basil and I wanted a night without pressure. So I told myself to drop it. You can love a person and also put your hand over your own mouth. I wouldn't do that forever, but for a while, I didn't want to hear myself ask hard questions. Working late became working always. He started staying at the studio later than me. "Conference call," he'd say, with a shrug that made everything seem normal. On some nights, I'd come back to the studio because I'd left my favorite thimble. Yes, I have favorites, don't laugh. And I'd find him alone in the office with the lights off, lit only by the computer glow, staring at something I couldn't see. "You okay?" I asked once. He jumped like I'd slapped him out of a dream. "Yeah, just tired." He shut the screen down too fast. We were happy, we were tired, we were growing. Which one mattered most depended on the day. Then the woman in the red dress walked through my door. "Hi," she said, flashing a smile like a camera. "I'm Sienna. I run a style channel. I love your work." Her voice was silk, smooth and sure. Her perfume was grapefruit and money. She was the kind of woman people look at. She knew it. So did I. She ordered a dress, paid in full. She posted about it, tagging me with hearts. It helped. It was good for the brand. Ethan met her in the studio one morning when she came for a fitting, and I was pinned to my own hem. They were both pretty people. They smiled pretty smiles at each other while I measured a waist that wasn't mine. I didn't flinch. I wasn't jealous. Or maybe I was, and I told myself I wasn't because the alternative was messy. He was my husband. She was my client. The world is a complicated room. We all live in it. They started emailing about collabs. I knew because he told me. "This could push you out of the boutique lane," he said, bouncing on his toes the way he did when he was excited. "This could make you mainstream." I nodded. "I don't want to be mainstream," I said, half laughing. "I want good, slow, right." He kissed my forehead. Good and slow doesn't pay rent on time. He wasn't wrong. He also wasn't telling me everything. One night, after a long day of fittings and a longer day of adjustments, I came home to find him asleep on the couch with his phone lit up on the cushion. A message preview hovered on the lock screen. "Sienna, you're bad." His reply, visible as if the universe wanted me to have it, "You love it." I stared until the screen went dark. I stood there with my keys in my hand like a stranger at my own door. Then I put his phone on the table, made tea, and sat on the edge of the tub for 10 minutes letting steam blur the mirror until I could see myself again. I wasn't going to guess. I was going to know. The next morning I asked, "Are you sleeping with her?" He laughed so fast I knew the answer before he said a word. "What? No, babe, come on, she's a client. Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," I said softly. "I'm being direct." He touched my shoulder with 2 fingers like he was testing for heat. "You're tired. You're taking everything personal. She's good for business. That is all. I'm sorry if a message looked flirty. That's the internet now. I love you. You know this." I did know that. I also knew that love doesn't close doors you need open. It opens them and lets the light in. So I decided to watch, not suspect, watch. And that's when the real story started to stitch itself together. Spring arrived like a blessing, soft air, earlier light, a dozen brides with calendars and hope. My summer collection was almost ready. It was my best work yet. Clean, easy lines, silk that held shape and breath. A ribbon of beaded moons hidden in the seams only the wearer would feel against her fingers. Little secrets. I loved them. 2 weeks before the show, a competitor launched a line online. My line. Not exactly. Not copy-paste, but close enough that I saw my hand in their hems, my curve in their sleeves. People messaged me with screenshots, everyone careful and kind, little heart emojis, and "Have you seen this? Looks so familiar." My stomach dropped so far it took my breath with it. I clicked through their lookbook and felt like someone had reached into my sketchbook with wet fingers and smudged everything I was proud of. I called Ethan. "Did you show anyone my prototypes?" He paused. "We've been courting buyers, you know this. People talk. If they cop it, it's because they're watching. It means you're hot." "Hot doesn't help me when people think I'm the copycat," I said. "How did they get the exact sleeve?" He breathed out through his nose. "Don't spiral, keep your head. We'll get ahead of it." That night he brought home takeout and a plan, press release, influencer seating. "We claim the silhouette," he said, tapping the table. "We own it in the public eye. We own the story." I wanted to believe him. He was good at owning stories. He had owned mine since the day he held that garment rack for me. We went forward with the show. People came. People clapped. People congratulated me with eyes that slid sideways, as if they were reading 2 books at once, and neither one had an ending yet. 3 days later, I found the billing statements. Loans I didn't know we had. A line of credit opened in my name. Payments to a company I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, larger ones later, all signed by someone with my name in a handwriting that was almost mine, the way a knockoff handbag is almost the real thing. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I sat in the office with the door closed and stared at paper that felt like ice. For a long time, I thought I might be dreaming inside a nightmare someone else had written. Then I stood, walked to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and said out loud, "No." When I stepped back into the office, Ethan was there. He must have heard the drawer, or maybe he just knew when to show up. "Why would you do this?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. He rubbed his forehead. "Do what?" "You know what?" He sat down like the air had gone out of his knees. "I did what I had to do to keep us afloat. You're brilliant, Maya, but brilliance doesn't pay vendors on Net 15. I moved money. I opened lines. I managed. I protected you from it because I love you. You forged my signature." He winced. "Don't use that word. It makes it sound like a crime." "It is one." Silence. The kind that builds up around two people who remember being different people. "You're tired," he said finally. "You're taking." "No," I held up my hand. "Do not tell me I'm tired. Do not use my exhaustion to explain your choices." His jaw worked. "Fine, I made choices to save us, and it worked." "It didn't," I said, my eyes burning. "It broke us, and you can't see it because you think breaking is normal. And maybe for you it is. It isn't for me." He stood fast enough that the chair scraped. "You think I'm the only one. You think people don't do this every day to run companies. You think your favorite brands are pure. Wake up, Maya. This is how the world runs." "Then I'll walk," I said. "I'll run. I won't live like this." He laughed once, a dry sound. "Run where? To what? This?" He gestured at the racks of gowns, the boards, the tables with chalk and pins. "Exists because of me. You'd still be upstairs with the florist without me, and I kept you from being eaten alive." That was the moment I realized Ethan liked the idea that I needed saving. It made him feel big. It made me small. I left that night with a backpack and a box of tools. Lara, my best friend, opened her door without asking a single question and handed me a key and a couch and a bowl of soup. I cried into her sweatshirt. I didn't cry for him. I cried for the woman who had loved a story more than she loved herself. The next morning, my lawyer, who was a cousin of a friend and blessedly stubborn, started pulling threads. The business paperwork that I'd signed without reading because I trusted the hands holding the pen. The trademark filings I hadn't watched closely because I was fitting a dozen brides before lunch. The IP assignments with my name and a signature that looked like mine, but wasn't mine on days when I would have remembered signing. He'd moved my name into corners and put his name into headlines. He'd taken ownership of what I created piece by piece, like someone picking pearls off a string one at a time, so you don't notice the necklace is gone until you touch your throat. I was embarrassed. I was angry. I was done. We divorced in a room so white it hurt to look at. He cried. He said he was sorry. He said he was sick and overwhelmed and had made 1,000 little mistakes that added up to heartbreak. He blamed the industry. He blamed scarcity. He blamed me for being mean when he had only ever tried to protect me. I signed where I had to sign to breathe again. He kept the studio name. I kept my hands. The day after the papers were final, I went to a thrift store and bought a second-hand dress I cut apart just to feel fabric against my scissors. Then I borrowed $3,000 from Lara, rented a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat, and opened my windows to let the steam soak into my plans. I sewed, in silence, in the mornings. At night, the rhythm of needle and thread became prayer. I thought I was done with him. I was, not yet. Because 6 months later, my phone lit up with a picture of a ring and a caption that made the world feel like it was tilting. She said yes. It read above a photo of Ethan and Sienna, both beaming, both edited until their skin looked like glass. Her hand at the center, the ring bright, the comments brighter, hearts, fireworks, congratulations. I stared until the phone went dark in my hand. Then I opened my laptop and I started to plan. Revenge is a hot word, but mine didn't feel hot. It felt cool, like a needle sliding through silk, each stitch exact. I didn't want to scream. I wanted to speak in a voice so steady it would make the room hush all by itself. I knew two things. I was not going to fight dirty, and I was not going to fight loud. If the truth was a light, I was going to aim it carefully. First, I found work, not flashy, not mine to brag about, ghost work. An old mentor, Ms. Whittaker, answered my email with a voice message that made me cry twice. Once because her voice sounded like home, and once because she said, "Yes, darling, come by at 3. She ran a quiet atelier that did private label pieces for houses that didn't want to admit they needed help. I signed NDA after NDA. I watched my hands make dresses that would be posted by other names. I got paid. I slept. I breathed. I saved. It wasn't glamorous. It was healing. Then I started writing everything down. Not the anger, the facts, dates, emails, screenshots. Every time Ethan had used my work at a meeting without crediting me. Every time a check had been cashed into an account I didn't know existed. Every time Sienna posted a sneak peek in an outfit that looked too much like something she shouldn't have seen yet. I cataloged the hurt until it became a file, not a wound. In the middle of this calm, a designer agent approached the atelier with a private commission. A high-profile client wanted a gown. House Camellia, a brand that liked clean lines and quiet luxury, had accepted the brief. They wanted my hands on the work. I didn't know who the bride was at first. Confidentiality is a thick curtain in that world. We got a silhouette sketch and a mood board, modern classic, fresh, light-catching detail. The notes felt like poetry someone wrote in a hurry. The first fitting was behind a screen. A voice on the other side laughed and clinked a glass and said, "I want something everyone will remember." I knew the laugh. I knew the way the words laid down like satin. I felt my throat go dry. "Sienna." I didn't step around the screen. I didn't make a sound. I pressed my palm flat against the fabric roll and breathed until I remembered how. You might ask why I didn't say no, why I didn't tell the agent to get someone else's hands, because my hands were the point, because this wasn't about dress sabotage or poison seams. This was about art and truth and a signature that had been taken from me one piece at a time. I wanted it back, not just legally, spiritually. I accepted the commission. The contract gave me one small gift. In House Camellia's private archive, each designer on a project may stitch a hidden mark, a private signature known to the atelier and the brand, not visible under normal light, not published, never loud. It's tradition. It's respect. I smiled at that clause. It felt like someone had left a key under a rock and told me where to find it. We began. Silk arrived like a river. We cut on the bias so the fabric draped over the body like it had been born there. The neckline dipped exactly once, no drama, just breath. The skirt fell clean, then flared at the back into a train that felt like a quiet exhale. And in the underskirt, I stitched my story. Not words, symbols. The small circle with A-line motif I'd used in my first collection to represent a moon in motion. A branch of laurel for strength I had to grow myself. And a line of tiny phoenix wings at the edge of the train, done in a specialty thread that looked like standard silk until a certain kind of light kissed it. Not a trick, not a trap. Art that reveals itself when someone pays attention. I was careful, I was professional, I never broke confidentiality, I never broke a seam in anger. We did 3 fittings. At the second, she brought champagne and a friend to film boomerangs of her twirling, all laughter and sweetness poured over pride. "This is going to break the internet," she said. "I mean, my other dresses did, but this is different." I agreed, it was different. At the third fitting, she asked for more sparkle. I suggested a belt that didn't exist. She pouted. We compromised with a veil comb that caught light like dew. She hugged the head of the atelier and said, "You're a genius," which is a thing people say when they forget that genius is made of 1,000 hours of unseen work and 3 burned fingers. I never stepped out from behind the drape. I kept my face and my fury in the shadows. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing. On the day we finished, I pressed my palm to the gown bag before it left the room. Not like a goodbye, like a promise. The week of the wedding, House Camellia called to confirm last details. "The family is buzzing," the liaison said. "It's going to be huge. You should come, anonymously, of course, as our guest. We'll put you in a corner and pour you a glass." I hesitated, then I said yes. Not to watch anyone fall, to watch the truth stand up. I picked my own dress for the event like I was choosing armor. Not loud ever again. Slate blue, a bias cut that made me feel like water. A small stitched phoenix hidden under the bust where my hand could touch it without anyone seeing. A reminder, rise, but do it softly. I did my makeup the way I like it. Brown liner, bare lips. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I trusted. When I arrived, the ballroom was a garden dressed for a dream. Flowers spilled like they were happy to be there. Light fell in warm squares. A soft song played like it had learned to walk on tiptoe. And then she saw me. "Maya," she said, her voice doing that high surprised thing people do when they're deciding whether to pretend they're delighted to see you or annoyed. "Wow, you came." I smiled. "Hello, Sienna, congratulations." She glanced at my dress, the one I'd made with hands that had just finished making hers. The lift to her lip was tiny. Enough. The women around her watched, and she liked being watched. "Oh, bold choice," she said, slow. "Is your dress vintage, like thrift store vintage? Cute." A flash of jealousy might have been my friend once. It wasn't tonight. The women around her laughed carefully, like flutes tapping each other. I didn't blush, I didn't burn, I let the comment pass me like weather. "You look radiant," I said, and I meant it, because beauty doesn't belong to the kind or the cruel. It just is. She blinked, a little wrong-footed by kindness where she wanted a fight. "Well, enjoy the show." "I intend to," I said. I found my corner. I found my glass. I found the photographer and shook his hand because I knew his work. I asked about his lighting scheme, casual, friendly, the way designers talk to other artists. He told me about the warm wash he'd start with and the cool flash he'd shift to for the dancing. I smiled. "The cool flash," I said, like I was tasting the phrase. "That's going to be beautiful." He grinned. "Wait until you see what it does to the silk." "I can imagine," I said, unable to keep a small secret smile from my face. As the ceremony started, my chest went quiet. She walked in, a sheen of light running over her gown like honey down a spoon. People sighed. Mothers dabbed eyes. Even I felt it, the simple good of something made well. Ethan looked handsome, which is a thing anyone can be with a suit and a steady paycheck. He looked happy, which is a thing you can fake until a camera asks if you mean it. When he saw me, he flinched. Small, there and gone. Then he smiled wider. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began. The words rolled. The vows were simple. I listened. I did not hate. If anything, I felt strangely tender, the way you might feel hearing a song you used to love in a store you don't shop at anymore. They kissed. Applause. Champagne shook and sprayed like joy. The first flash popped. The photographer worked the room, his rhythm steady. And then, the pattern woke up. The light hit just right, and the tiny phoenix wings at the edge of her train lifted out of the silk as if they'd been waiting for their cue. She didn't see it. The guests did. A whisper started. The second flash. The wings grew. The tiny circle with A-line glowed near the hem, a private moon becoming public. Two women gasped like someone had stepped on their "there it is" nerve. "What is that?" one whispered, half scared, half in love. The DJ faded the song a hair, sensing the shift. The planner's eyes flicked to the lighting rig, to me, to the groom. She didn't know what was happening. I did. The maid of honor lifted her glass. The mic found her hand. But the room was talking to itself now, little pockets of questions rising. Sienna twisted to look at her train, annoyed first, then puzzled. She shook her head once like trying to dislodge a fly. "Is there something on me?" she asked, laughing too loud. "Something is on you," I whispered to my glass. "It's called truth." The planner, bless her soul, made a decision. "Let's do toasts," she said, bright as a bell. "Then we'll get you two dancing." The maid of honor spoke, sweet and safe. The best man told a story that made Ethan look like a hero. People laughed. People ate. The wings at the hem faded when the flash slowed. The room forgot for a heartbeat. Then the planner looked at me, not because she knew, because she needed a filler speaker while the slideshow loaded. "Would you like to say something?" she asked, walking over, her hands already holding the mic like a delicate bird. I stood. I smoothed my dress. I took the microphone and the room settled like a lake after a stone finally stopped skipping. I didn't look at Ethan. I didn't look at Sienna. I looked at the people who had come to witness love because they still believed in it. "My name is Maya," I said. My voice came out clear, the way it does when you know you're standing on rock. "Some of you know me, some of you don't, but if you don't, you know my hands." I paused. A murmur went through the room, curious. The planner blinked, sudden understanding dawning like a sunrise that might turn into a storm. I smiled, gentle. "I want to tell you a story about a dress," I said. "How it gets made, how it holds a woman, how it can carry a truth even when nobody asks it to." Ethan took a step, then stopped, like the floor had tilted under him. Sienna lifted her chin, her mouth set in a line that said, "Keep it light, keep it pretty, don't you dare." I looked down at my own hands. I thought about the florist downstairs from my first studio, about the jacarandas, about the steam above a laundromat. I lifted my eyes and decided. "I designed the dress the bride is wearing," I said. The hush that fell wasn't quiet. It had weight, it had heat, it had shock. Sienna's lips parted. She didn't breathe for a second. Ethan looked like someone had unplugged him from a wall. "And I sewed a signature into the hem," I went on, still calm, still kind. "It appears when light hits a certain way. It's not there to embarrass anyone. It's there because art deserves credit, and because some stories find a way to speak even when you think you've silenced them." The DJ slowly lowered the background track until it was a pulse you could barely feel. People leaned in. "If that's true," someone called gently, unsure whether this was a toast or an undoing, "then why are you telling us now?" "Because last year," I said, finally letting my eyes land on Ethan the way a hawk lands, "a man I loved decided my work belonged to him. He took what wasn't his. He broke what he didn't build. He made me feel small when all I wanted to do was make dresses that made women feel whole. I left. I started over. Quietly." I turned to the bride. And now she's wearing my work, the work he told the world was his. You could hear the word exposed echo in people's minds, even if I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. "Today isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about correction, credit where it's due, consent where it was ignored, truth where there was spin." I took a breath. "I wish you both joy, I truly do. I don't want your marriage to start with lies because lies rot things from the inside. So here is the truth. That gown is mine. Those wings are mine. That signature is mine. And I'm not invisible anymore." I handed the mic back to the planner and sat down, heart steady, hands calm. I had said what I came to say. The rest was weather. The room held still for a full beat. Then it moved, all at once. Ethan's face went gray fast, that flat color a person turns when all their talking points fall out of their pockets at the same time. He stepped toward the mic as if correcting me would be easy, as if he'd done it 1,000 times and could do it once more. "Maya," he began. The planner cut the feed with a smile that could slice. "We'll do photos now," she said brightly into the mic that no longer broadcast in the room, then to me, softer. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "I'm perfect," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Sienna didn't cry. She didn't scream. She looked down at her train as if the dress might speak up and explain itself. The pattern had faded again in the warm light, the wings sleeping like nothing had happened. She looked up at me. The question in her eyes was simple, stripped of all the gloss. Is this real? I answered without words. I touched my temple with 2 fingers, a signal Ms. Whittaker, and I use when the details are true and the stitching sure. Slow, certain. Her gaze flicked to Ethan, then to me, then to the pillar where the photographer stood, still as a statue, his flash resting at his side like a secret he wasn't sure he wanted anymore. "Flash," I said softly to him as I walked by, not an order, a suggestion, an invitation to light. He lifted the camera. The burst hit the train and the wings rose. You could hear people realize it this time. It sounded like soft silverware put down very carefully on cloth, ting, 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 as if manners had been taught again in an instant. Eyes widened. The hidden moonmark glowed once like a wink. A murmur built, the way waves do when the tide is turning and the shore knows it before the sailors do. Then an ant with red lipstick and a spine like a prayer cleared her throat and said to no one in particular, Well, let me tell you about a woman processing 7 things at once while standing in a dress that weighs as much as the choices she's made. Sienna's jaw set. Her smile, which photographs loved, did not arrive. She wasn't left speechless because I wanted to humiliate her. She was quiet because she realized she had danced into a room where all the doors were mirrors. She walked toward me, careful, her steps small, the train a whisper behind her. When she reached me, she didn't whisper. She didn't hiss. She didn't play to the crowd. What does this mean? She asked, not actress sweet, but human. It means, I said, keeping my voice for her, not the room. I designed your dress. It means the brand you bought it from hired me to make it. It means the signature at the hem belongs to me. And it means the man you're marrying told people a long time that my work was his. Her throat moved. Did you do this to hurt me? I did this to be seen, I said. If that hurts, I'm sorry for the pain, not for the truth. She took that in like medicine you want to spit into the sink and decide, finally, to swallow. She nodded once. Her eyes, if you looked close, were glassy, not with grief, with the sharpness that shows up right before a person changes. You came to my fitting, didn't you? She asked, a laugh catching on the edge of her voice, shocked and a little wild. You were there. I was behind the drape, I said. I kept it professional. I only stepped into the open now. I mocked your dress, she said, giving herself that truth without me handing it to her. I didn't recognize it. It's not flashy, I said, and my mouth ticked up before I could stop it, a tiny smile that said I remembered everything and loved myself anyway. But it's mine. She looked at Ethan then. He was circling the periphery of the conversation like a moth, deciding which flame might not end him. Ethan, she said, voice low but not kind, did you know? He made the weak choice. This is a stunt, he said, not answering the question he'd been asked. She's jealous, she's trying to. She lifted a hand, not to him, to the air, the way a conductor stops a section from playing until they find the tempo again. Answer me, she said, still low. Did you know she designed this gown? He swallowed. Not exactly, not. He saw his path and sprinted for it. Camellia outsources, a lot of hands touch a dress, it's not. That's not the question, she said. She wasn't a kind person in the way the world uses the word to mean soft. But in that moment, she was honest, and honesty is a muscle I respect. She looked at me. Do you have proof? Yes, I said simply. House Camellia's internal archive shows design attribution. The atelier head can confirm. The thread at your hem is registered to me. And while we're nomming documents also, I have copies of my sketches, dates, emails, and filings that show how he moved my work into his name like it was furniture he could rearrange. I haven't gone public. I didn't want to, I breathed. Until today. A hush that wasn't fear fell again. It was the hush of a jury that didn't ask to be impaneled and finds itself listening anyway. A voice rose from the bar, one of Ethan's college friends with a loud laugh. Come on, he scoffed, fragile bravado shining like cheap lacquer. This is a wedding. It is, Aunt Red Lipstick said, firm enough to pin him to the floor with her tone. That doesn't make it a place where lies are allowed. The planner slid to my side. Do you want me to call Ms. Whittaker? She whispered, and I loved her for knowing the exact name to say. No, I said, not yet. Because this wasn't about piling on proof like bricks until someone suffocated. This was about letting the air in. I turned back to the room. I didn't touch the mic. I didn't need to. I need to say one more thing, I said. Then I'm done. I didn't come to ruin a day. I came to repair a year. I looked at Sienna. I forgive you for mocking me. We all mock what we don't understand sometimes. I forgive you for loving a story more than the truth. I did that too once. But now you know. Decide who you want to be with it." I looked at Ethan, the man I married, the man who taught me how to take a deep breath and how to stop needing permission to breathe. "I don't hate you," I said, soft enough that he had to lean in to hear, and maybe that was the most generous thing I'd ever given him. "But I won't let you shrink me to fit your pocket. Not ever again." I turned to leave the center of the room, not storming, not dramatic, just done. Before I could step away, the DJ, who had been watching all this with eyes like a hawk and hands like a surgeon, did something that felt like a blessing. He dimmed the warm wash and for one clean second pulsed the cool white flash around the room 3 times. On, off, on, off, on, off. The train glowed, then rested. Glowed, then rested. Each burst wrote the wings into the silk and unwrote them, like a promise speaking, then pausing, then speaking again. People clapped. Not a roar, not a rally, but a recognition clap, the kind theater gives when an understudy steps in and nails a note. The kind people give when truth lands without breaking the floor. That clap broke something in Ethan's spine that had been too stiff for too long. He lunged, and I saw the old version of him, the one who could charm a banker and disarm a room, reach for me. "Maya," he said too loud, "you're making a scene." I looked at the photographer. He shook his head once, tiny, the way someone does when they've seen enough. He lowered his camera. He wasn't going to capture this part. It didn't need to be preserved. "You made the scene," I said, not unkind. "I'm just turning the lights on." He swallowed. He turned to the room, hands up like a man calming a dog. "This is a misunderstanding. We'll clear it up. Please enjoy yourselves." No one left. No one cheered for him. They simply watched. And there's nothing harder to stand under than a soft gaze that expects you to tell the truth. Sienna took a breath. "If she designed this dress," she said, not looking at me now, looking at him, "why didn't you tell me?" "My love," he said, low, coaxing, the tone that had worked on me 100 times. "I didn't know, not for sure, and this isn't." She shook her head. She wasn't going to let him lull the room back to sleep. "Why didn't you tell me her work was your wife?" "Ex-wife," he said too fast. Then he flinched at his own correction, because that was the wrong part to emphasize and everyone heard it. The planner's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Then she looked up at me and nodded as if the universe had just handed us an assist. "The atelier head is here," she mouthed. My eyebrows flew up. Ms. Whittaker had come of her own accord, because someone on her team had texted her, because she knew the thread in that hem like she knew her morning tea. She walked in with her calm like a cloak, not rushing, not grabbing the spotlight, just solid. She reached me first, touched my hand once, warm, grounding, and turned to Sienna with a professional's grace. "Your gown is exquisite on you," she said, "and it was designed by this woman." She nodded at me, not like a surprise reveal, but like a gentle correction no one could argue with because facts are stubborn in the prettiest way. "Our logs confirm it. So does the thread at your hem. I am not here to create drama. I am here to keep the record clean." A beat, then another clap, soft and respectful. This one didn't land on me like a gift. It landed on us, all the invisible hands in the room who make things and get forgotten. The stylists. The planners, the DJ, the photographer, the seamstresses, the floral assistant who spent 2 hours wiring a peony because it wouldn't sit right. It was their clap too. Sienna stood very still. Then she did the bravest thing I saw her do that day. She looked at the planner. "Can you give me a moment with my husband?" Her voice didn't shake. They walked to a quiet corner behind a column of lilies. They didn't shout. They didn't perform. Their heads bent together. His hands moved like a man pleading for a second story. Hers moved like a woman, drawing a map of a new route. I let them have their privacy. I went to my corner and put down my glass, hands finally trembling a little now that the adrenaline had left. Lara texted me from across the country, even though she had no way of knowing what was happening in real time. "Proud of you, sunshine. Have you eaten?" Only Lara could hold those 2 sentences in her hands at the same time and make them weigh the same. I laughed to myself and breathed. Ms. Whittaker stood beside me like an anchor. "You did it," she said. I didn't want to break a day. You didn't, she said. You corrected it. We stood there together, two women who knew what thread can do that words can't sometimes, and we watched the next choice unfold. The lilies were tall enough to pretend they were trees. Their scent hung thick, like a memory you can't shake even if you open all the windows. We stepped behind them, Sienna first, Ethan a pace behind her, me last, and for a second the room dimmed into a hush that felt like a confession booth without walls. She turned to him. No performance now, no audience. Just a woman in a white dress finally looking at the man beside her as if he were a headline she hadn't read yet. Tell me the truth, she said, 4 words steady as stitches. Ethan smoothed his tie. Old habit, old armor. I told you, this is not what it looks like, she's twisting. No, she cut in, not cruel, just certain. That line worked on other people. It doesn't work here. Did you know she designed my dress? He tried a half smile, shoulders lifted like a shrug might be a shield. Brands outsource, a dozen hands. Stop explaining something I did not ask, she said. Did you know it was her? Silence comes in many flavors. This one tasted like a penny on the tongue. He exhaled. I suspected, he said, eyes skittering away from mine. I wasn't sure. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, voice low but not small. You knew I came into her studio. You knew I purchased her pieces. You knew, she glanced at me, then back at him. You knew we had history. He pressed his fingers to his forehead like he could push the right words out if he leaned hard enough. Because it wasn't the point. The point is, the brand handled it. The point is, today is our day and she laughed once, no joy in it. Our day, how many of our days looked like this under the surface? How many of our deals came from work that wasn't yours? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her calm did more damage than a shout ever could. I won't be a crown on a stolen story. He reached for her wrist. She stepped back, small, clear. Don't, she said. He let his hand fall. The muscle in his jaw fluttered like a trapped moth. She turned to me. Why didn't you tell me during the fittings? Not an accusation, an honest question. You were there. Because I gave House Camellia my word, I said. And because I didn't want to use your day to fight my old fight. I came tonight ready to keep my mouth shut if my work could stay quietly mine. But when the light hit and my signature showed, it felt wrong to sit there and pretend not to see myself. I didn't plan a spectacle. I planned a truth. She took that in. Her eyes moved, left-right, as if she were sorting receipts in her head. And you sewed a mark I couldn't see until the light changed. I always have, I said. Long before you, long before him, it's mine, it hurts nobody. It helps me breathe. Behind us, the room kept moving, servers with trays, a cousin telling a story too loudly, the soft thrum of music like a heartbeat. Out here, time stretched thin. Ethan found my face at last. You could have come to me, he said, a whisper that wanted to be a shout and didn't dare. We could have. We did that already, I said. In rooms where papers were signed and pens bled out promises. You taught me how those conversations end. His mouth opened, then closed. Words, for once, didn't rescue him. Sienna lifted her veil, touched the comb, and paused. I watched that tiny moment like it was a cliff edge. She pulled the comb out, slowly. The veil slid down and she handed it to the planner, who stood like a witness with a clipboard and a spine of steel under her smile. I'm not breaking my own day, Sienna said, almost to herself. I'm resetting it. She faced us again. To me, if I ask the DJ to bring up the light and ask the room to give you credit, will you come stand beside me? She saw me hesitate. She added softer, I can do it alone if you prefer, but I'd like you there. I let a breath out. I'll stand near, I said. Not in the center, this is still your wedding. She nodded, then to Ethan. You will not take the mic, not yet. If you love me, you'll let me handle this in my voice. He looked like a man on a ladder that suddenly remembered height. See. Don't nickname me right now, she said, and somehow that cut deeper than any other word could have. The planner, efficient magic wrapped in a satin jumpsuit, slid her earpiece in and murmured to the DJ. The music shifted to a gentle hold. The photographer wiped his lens. Ms. Whittaker stood in the doorway of our little lily chapel and lifted her chin once, an old school nod that meant, "I'm here." "Ready?" Sienna asked me. I glanced at the ballroom, the dance floor waiting, the cake immaculate, the guests perched on the edge of scandal and decency. I thought of the girl who once tucked my first trunk show lanyard into a shoebox like it was a trophy. I thought of the way a needle knows where to go if you just guide the fabric right. "I'm ready," I said. We stepped out from behind the lilies like we were stepping onto a stage we hadn't auditioned for, but knew, somehow, we were built to stand on. Sienna didn't ask for silence. She earned it by walking into the center of the room with her head high and her veil gone, looking like a woman who had just decided to live with both eyes open. She took the mic from the planner. No wobble, no giggle. The DJ lowered the music until it felt like a heartbeat in the floor. "Friends," she said, and even the word sounded new in her mouth, less perform and more mean it. "I need 1 minute." The room tilted toward her. Even forks paused in midair. "I have made my living on images," she said. "On telling stories about what looks good and what feels right. But sometimes the story that looks good isn't the one that's true. Tonight, I learned that the gown I'm wearing, the gown you've all been complimenting, is the work of the woman you just heard from." She lifted her hand, palm open, toward me, not dragging me into her spotlight, inviting me to stand at the edge of it. I walked forward and stopped 2 steps back from her shoulder, close enough to be seen, far enough to let her lead. "Her name is Maya," she continued. "She designed this. She sewed her signature into it, hidden, gentle, brilliant. When the light hits, it shows. Not to embarrass, to mark art as hers. House Camellia, thank you for connecting us, even if you didn't intend to introduce us like this." She glanced to Ms. Whittaker, who nodded once, approving and unruffled. "To anyone posting tonight, please tag her name. To my team, we'll fix the credits on all our channels by morning." Her voice didn't tremble, but her eyes shone, and not in the glossy way a ring light does it. In the way a person gets liquid when they decide to tell the truth. "As for my husband," she said, and a soft murmur moved across the room like wind through wheat. "He and I will have our conversation in private, as we should have many of them earlier. But one thing is public. If I have ever mocked a woman for what she wore, or for what she could afford, I'm embarrassed. Tonight I mocked Maya's dress without recognizing the person who made me look like this. That's on me, and I'm sorry." The planner didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her eyes softened the tiniest bit, which is planner language for good choice. "I didn't take the mic. I didn't need to. I put my hand to my heart, a small gesture. She saw it." She nodded. Then she did something I didn't expect. She looked at the DJ. "Hey, can you do the cool flash for a second?" she asked, her tone suddenly lighter. "I want the room to see what I see." The DJ, bless him forever, pulsed the light. On, off, and with each strobe the tiny phoenix wings lifted at the hem and settled, lifted and settled like breath. A soft "oh" moved through the room, a ripple that felt like foam against a shore. The hidden moonmark winked once and vanished back into silk like it was satisfied. "Art finds the light," she said, mostly to herself. Then louder, "Okay, we're going to dance, we're going to eat cake, we're going to celebrate love, but we're also going to respect the hands that make beauty possible. So to start the night the right way, I'd like to dedicate the first dance to the people in this room who work behind the scenes. Planners, photographers, DJs, florists, seamstresses. Ms. Whittaker, would you join me for one song? Maya, will you stay nearby? Ethan." She turned to him, and the whole room held their breath. "Please give me the space I asked for." He stopped mid-step, caught between habit and heat. He backed up. The aunt with the red lipstick gave him a look that could write 1,000 essays. Ms. Whittaker, elegant in black with a pin that caught the light, walked to Sienna like a queen arriving in a garden. The DJ slid into a slow instrumental. And there, on a dance floor that was supposed to debut a husband-wife story, a bride danced for 1 full minute with the head of an atelier who had never been credited on a viral post in her life. People clapped in time, not loud, joyful, respectful. When the minute was up, Sienna pressed a kiss to Ms. Whittaker's cheek, permission asked and granted with a smile, and then handed the song to the room. "Dance," she said, Eat, enjoy, we'll be back." She and Ms. Whittaker moved toward the lilies. She stopped beside me for a second and reached for my hand. I let her take it. She squeezed once, quick, like a thread catch you tie off so it doesn't slip. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do the right thing tomorrow," I whispered back. "That's how this stays clean." She nodded and vanished behind the white blooms. I turned to step away, but the father of the bride intercepted me with eyes the color of rain. "My girl has a spine," he said, pride and surprise wrestling in his voice. "She does," I said. He cleared his throat. "What happens to him?" He jerked his chin toward Ethan, who stood at the edge of the crowd like a salesman whose product had just been recalled. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But whatever it is, it won't be because I shouted. It'll be because paper and time are patient." He thought about that, nodded once, and went to find his wife. I didn't dance. Not then. I stood in my corner and watched a party heal itself in real time. Laughter returned in careful doses. Cake was cut. Someone cried in the bathroom and then came back out with powder on her nose and a new resolve. Ethan tried twice to move toward Sienna. Twice, the planner, who must have taken judo in a former life, redirected him with a gentle hand and a clipboard. Near the end of the night, the photographer passed me, paused, and said, "I've shot 100 weddings." That was new. "Sorry for your timeline," I said. He grinned. "I live for the true ones." I left before the bouquet toss. It felt right to let the night finish without my shadow on it. On my way out, I glanced over my shoulder. The cool flash hit one last time, and for just a heartbeat, the wings rose across the floor like dawn. The morning after, my phone didn't just buzz. It hummed like a hive. DMs, emails, a voice note from Lara that made me laugh and cry in the same breath. "I don't know what you did, but my coffee tastes like justice." I scrolled with caution. I've learned the internet is a river that can carry you or drown you, and the difference is often your own grip on the bank. House Camellia posted a statement by noon. "We are proud to confirm that the lead designer of last night's custom gown is Maya Arlen. We believe in crediting every hand that builds beauty. Our internal archives and signature registry reflect this authorship. We will continue to highlight the work of our independent collaborators." The post had a photo of the hem under cool light. The wings were alive, mid-lift, delicate, and undeniable. The comments were kind, shocked, curious. A few were cynical in the way the internet knows how to be, but the tide felt right. Sienna posted next. A soft-lit video at her kitchen table, still in morning after makeup with her hair up and a hoodie over her shoulders. No filters, no brand logos in the background. "Hi," she said, the way people say it when they aren't selling anything but honesty. "Last night, a truth walked into my wedding and asked to be seen. I've spent years telling stories about style. Today I'm telling you a story about credit. The gown I wore was designed by an artist named Maya. I mocked her dress when I saw her, which is something I'm ashamed of. She stood firm and gentle and corrected the record. I'm grateful she did. My team and I have updated all credits. We're donating a portion of our ad revenue this month to a fund that supports independent seamstresses and designers. And to anyone I taught to like something just because it glowed online, try liking the work you can't see, too. It matters." She tagged me. She pronounced my name right. She didn't cry. She didn't perform. She did what she said she would do, the right thing, quickly. Ms. Whittaker texted a photo of her cat, a long, bored animal draped over bolts of muslin, with the caption, "We made the internet behave for a second. Tea." I went to her atelier that afternoon. She poured tea like a ceremony and handed me a folder as if it were a baby. "Here," she said, matter of fact. "Your thread registration, your attribution logs, copies of your sketches we archived during the commission, and a note from our legal team. They'll back you if you proceed with any formal corrections against your former studio." I flipped through the papers. My name looked right where it was. It felt like someone sliding a picture frame back to level on a wall. "Do I go loud?" I asked. "Do I list everything he did, start to finish?" She stirred her tea slowly. "Noise fades," she said. "Paper stays, choose." I chose. My lawyer filed to correct authorship on contested pieces from my last year at the old studio. We sent notices to vendors who had been told to put his name where mine belonged. We sent quiet letters, firm and calm, with dates and receipts. No threats, just facts. 2 weeks later, the board of his company released a tight-lipped statement about a restructuring. In our world, that word has 1,000 meanings, but here it meant the thing it always means. He was asked to step aside while people with calculators and consciences opened drawers. He called me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that started with my name and ended with silence. As apologies go, it wasn't one yet. It was a man at the edge of a cliff finally noticing the drop. Then the email arrived that changed my future more than any feed ever could. Subject, settlement. We met in a conference room with glass walls and plants that looked too healthy to be real. His lawyers spoke in careful tones. Mine did too. Numbers were discussed. Ownership corrected. My signature mark, circle with a line, moon in motion, was recorded in 3 separate places where it had been missing. He returned usage rights he had taken. There were checks and clauses and a paragraph that said he could not use any design of mine from a specific period without crediting me and compensating me. I don't want your name, I said, when they offered me the old studio's trademark as part of the package. You keep it. I'm building something else. His eyes flicked up then, something like surprise, something like relief. He looked older in that room, less shiny, more human. It didn't make me soften. It made me tell the truth inside myself. He was a person who made choices that hurt me, and he wasn't a monster. Both things can be true. We signed. I walked out lighter. That night, Sienna sent a voice note. The kind you replay twice, because the second time you can listen for the thing under the words. Hey, she said. I won't take your time. I wanted to say I'm sorry again, not just for the dress comment. For being the kind of woman who didn't ask enough questions because the answers might mess up a pretty picture. I learned something because you stood up. If you ever want me to use my platform to lift up quiet designers, I'm here. No strings, just gratitude. I typed and deleted 3 responses. Then I sent the simplest one. Thank you. Yes. Let's make a list of names the internet should know. 2 days later, she posted a series called Credit the Hands. It wasn't chummy. It wasn't performative. It was names and faces and links to small studios with rent due and brilliance burning. Orders went up. Wait lists formed. Quiet women got less quiet because the world finally leaned in to listen. And Ethan. He texted, "Can we talk?" I sat with the question for 3 days, then said yes to coffee in a place with windows and a clock in plain sight. Boundaries can be furniture you lean on. This was mine. He arrived on time, which was new. He looked tired. Not camera tired. Real tired, the kind that sits under your eyes like a bruise the world doesn't need to see to know it's there. I'm sorry, he said before the drinks came. No preamble, no performance. 2 words naked. For what? I asked. Make a person name it. It's how you test if apology is air or brick. For making something beautiful and then trying to carry it under my name because it fit better in my hands than in my ego, he said. He tried for a smile. It didn't land. For telling myself the story that because I helped you, I owned you. For signing things with your name because it was easy. He swallowed. And for making you feel small so I could feel big. Silence, the good kind. The kind that lets words land. What are you doing now? I asked. Stepping back, he said. Therapy twice a week. A consultant is running the studio while the board looks at everything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just didn't want the last thing between us to be a contract. I nodded. Thank you for saying it out loud. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We didn't pretend we were anything other than 2 people on different roads. He stood. He left. I watched him go and felt something in me release like a knot finally remembering how to loosen. I walked out into air that smelled like rain and heat. I tilted my face up. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the sky wasn't pressing down. It was just there, mine to stand under. When the settlement cleared, I didn't buy a car or a ring or a trip. I bought a key. A slim silver one that opened the door to a sunlit corner space just off a street where people actually walk. The windows were old. The floor was scuffed. The ceiling had beams that looked like bones. It smelled like dust and possibility. I painted the walls the color of mourning. I bought a table big enough to lay out dreams without folding them. Lara flew in with a suitcase full of snacks and tape measures and sat cross-legged in the center of the floor to make a plan like only she can. Sticky notes, schedules, a Sharpie that could probably write on clouds. "What's it called?" she asked, looking up at me from a nest of fabric swatches. I had thought about that for months. Names matter, so does what you do with them. "Moonline," I said, touching the circle and line mark sketched on the corner of a notepad. "Because the moon moves and so do I." She grinned. "Moonline it is." Ms. Whittaker stopped by on opening week with a ribbon and a pair of scissors that belonged in a museum. "For your first cut," she said, and I swear her eyes were wet for a second before she pretended they were. We built a team. Yi, with lightning in their fingers and a laugh that sneaked out when they were sure no one was listening. Rena, quiet until fabric hit her hands, then fluent in seams and patience. A part-time bookkeeper who believes in receipts like other people believe in horoscopes. A student intern who cried the first time she pressed a seam right and then cried harder when I told her it was okay that she cried. We built rules, not the kind that make people small, the kind that keep everyone safe. Every piece gets a card tucked into its hem with the first names of every person who touched it. Design, cut, sew, press, finish. Every client sees our process. No late-night rushes that break bodies. No glamorizing burnout. No ghosting. Credit every hand. We built a fund, the Hemline Fund. Micro-grants of $500 to small makers who need to replace a machine, buy fabric, take a class. We didn't make a website at first. We just posted a simple note. "If you're building beauty, tell us what you need." The emails lit up. The first grant went to a woman who made quinceañera gowns out of her living room. The second went to a retired tailor who wanted to teach kids in his building to sew instead of scroll. The third went to a man down the block whose iron had died mid-press and who nearly cried when an Amazon box showed up with a new one. We built clothes, simple, honest, dresses that fit shoulders like secrets fit diaries, suits that let the wearer breathe, a line called Laundry Light because steam still makes me calm, silk that catches morning, not just midnight. On the first open studio day, the room buzzed with the hum I missed. Clients telling stories while they sip water from real glasses. A kid pressing her nose to the window and leaving a smudge I didn't wipe off for a week because it made me smile. Ms. Whittaker sitting in the corner like a benevolent ghost making notes nobody will ever see and every dress will benefit from. Sienna came by the second month in jeans and a plain white tee, no cameras. She didn't sweep in. She stepped. She brought a plant. "For your light," she said. We stood beside a rail of sample gowns. She touched a seam. "I learned something from you," she said. "Me too," I said. We weren't friends. We weren't enemies. We were two women who had walked through a room where the lights changed and come out the other side without pretending nothing had happened. That's its own kind of bond. She left with a slip dress that looked like water. She posted a photo 2 weeks later, a simple caption, "The fit is a love letter to patience. Designed by Moonline by Maya, credit the hands." She turned off the comments. It wasn't a conversation starter. It was a statement. Clients came, slowly, perfectly, not a flood, a stream, work that felt like something I could hold. Awards started sniffing around, but I let them sniff without opening the door. I wasn't chasing shiny. I was chasing true. Then an envelope arrived in handwriting. I recognized before my heart remembered we were safe. "Maya, I won't take more than 1 page. I'm sorry. I'm working to be a person who doesn't take what isn't his. I stepped down. I'm helping clean up the mess I made. I don't expect you to care. But I wanted to write it with my hand because I ruined too much with my name in a font I didn't earn. You were the storm I admired and tried to own. I'm learning I can stand in the rain and not steal the lightning. Be well. Hey." I sat with the letter on my lap until the sun moved across the floor and made a stripe over the words. I didn't forgive him in a lightning bolt. Forgiveness isn't drama. It's a quiet practice. But I let the letter be what it was, a sign that some stories end without noise. The first Moonline show was small, 20 chairs, no runway. We invited clients, friends, the florist from my first studio who brought a bucket of stems and said, "I knew you when." We played a playlist that sounded like mornings and mercy. At the end, I spoke. "Thank you for trusting me," I said. "Thank you for not asking me to be loud when all I want to be is clear. Thank you for choosing clothes that feel like your own breath. And if anyone tells you that you owe them your shine, remember your name is stitched inside your hem, in thread, in spirit, in the way you stand." People cried. I did too. Yi handed me a tissue like an usher. We laughed. We ate cake someone's aunt had baked, lemon with a glaze that cracked under a fork. As I swept that night, music off, windows open, a breeze moved the sheer curtains like a sigh. I stood in the middle of my room, in shoes that didn't hurt, and felt relief like a warm hand on my back. Stories like mine get told in fire and storm metaphors. I've used those words. They fit. But if you ask me how revenge felt in the end, not the plotting, not the adrenaline of the reveal, not the click of a pen in a glass room, I'll tell you something you might not expect. It felt like light. Not the blinding kind. The kind that slips under a door in the morning and reminds you that night is not forever. The kind that shows dust motes and doesn't make you ashamed of them because they're honest. The kind that lands on a hem and lifts wings you stitched in the dark when nobody was watching. People ask if I'd do it differently, if I'd set a louder fire, if I'd taken more. If I'd dragged his name across a feed until it wore thin. There's a part of me that understands the hunger in those questions. A part that remembers standing in a bathroom with the shower running just so I could cry into the sound and not in the silence. But here's what I know now. Revenge that destroys the room you have to live in isn't victory. It's smoke in your own lungs. Truth doesn't need to shout. It needs to stand. Credit is not kindness. It's currency. Pay people what they're owed. Keep your receipts. Always. Silence is not the opposite of being ready. If someone mocks your dress, smile. They don't know the measurements of your backbone. If someone tries to shrink you to fit their pocket, you are allowed to walk away and buy a new coat with bigger pockets and your name inside the lining. I used to think justice was a bang. It turns out it's a series of small, steady clicks. A signature spelled right, a clause corrected, a name tagged, a young designer opening a box with a new iron, a bride dancing with an atelier head while the world watches and learns. Do I still get mad sometimes? Yes. Do I still wake up and remember the night the internet learned my signature? Yes. But more often, I wake up and make coffee and run my hand over bolts of fabric and feel grateful my hands are still mine. If you're listening to this and you've been betrayed by a lover, a friend, a partner, a place that told you you'd be safe, here's what I want you to hear in my voice, clear and simple. You are not a fool because you trusted. Trust is not a mistake. Giving it to the wrong person is a wound, not a diagnosis. You can heal. You can gather proof. You can choose quiet over chaos and still win. The night of the wedding, after I left, I walked 3 extra blocks so I could pass the laundromat that steamed me through my first nights alone. The door was propped open. Machines turned. A woman folded a red shirt with tender hands. The air smelled like clean cotton and coin soap. I stood there for a minute, a stranger on a sidewalk, and I said thank you. Not to anyone, to everything, to thread, to light. To women who don't let go of themselves, even when someone tries to pry their fingers off their own names. I still stitch wings into hems, not always visible, not always under cool flash. Sometimes the light that brings them up is the light inside the woman wearing the dress when she looks in the mirror and sees herself. The last time I saw Sienna in person, she was with a friend in my studio, no cameras, no gloss. She touched the phoenix thread on a sample and smiled. "You started something," she said. "So did you," I said. She nodded, grateful and grown. She left with a card tucked in her pocket listing 3 small studios she'd decided to spotlight next. She didn't post a photo with me. She didn't need to. It wasn't about us being seen together. It was about who else might be seen because we kept walking. And Ethan, I don't check his page. I don't check his company. If he fixes things, good. If he doesn't, that's his weather. My forecast is mine. So here's the moral I promised you, not in a lecture, in a life. Betrayal can turn you into a weapon you swing at everything, or it can turn you into a window that lets in light. I chose the window. I chose to correct the record, not torch the room. I chose to let my work speak and to make sure when it spoke, it had my name on it. You don't need to go to a wedding to do the same. You can start where you are. You can open a folder and put your facts in it. You can call the person who will pour you tea and tell you you're not crazy. You can stitch your signature where the light can find it. You can make a fund to help the hands behind you. You can put your name right side up again. And if you ever stand 3 rows back in a room where someone tries to make you small, remember this. You are allowed to step forward, take the mic, and speak with a voice that makes the room go still. Not to destroy, to set it right. Thank you for listening to my story. If it found you when you needed it, send it to someone who needs it too. And if you're a maker of clothes, of art, of the life you want, keep going. Your light is coming. It always does. Months later, we made a gown for a woman who didn't think she was a gown person. She came in with sneakers and a notebook and a line in her mouth that said, "I don't do fancy." I nodded. "We don't do fancy either," I said. "We do right." She tried on a sample. The mirror caught her and didn't let go. Rena pinned. Yi hummed. I watched her shoulders drop the way a person drops a bag they didn't realize was heavy. "What's that?" she asked, eyes on the hem. "A list," I said. "Names of the hands that made your dress." "Do I get to keep it?" "It's sewn in," I said. "It goes where you go." She cried. We did too, a little. There's always a box of tissues on the second shelf, next to the extra chalk. It's a rule now. Later that week, a package arrived from a city I'd never been to. Inside, a stack of hand-drawn thank you notes. Kids had sewn their first crooked seams with the retired tailor we'd helped. They'd drawn robots and hearts and a dress that looked like a triangle with legs. One note had a single sentence, "Thank you for seeing hands." I taped it above my machine. One evening, long after closing, I turned the lights off except for the small lamp on my table. The studio went gold and quiet. I pulled a length of silk toward me, needle threaded with the moonline mark. I stitched it slow, like prayer. The door was locked. The world was loud somewhere else. Here, it was me and a seam and the sound fabric makes when it says yes. And in that soft dark, I heard a line in my head I will carry until I can't carry anything anymore. Put your name in your work and your work in the world. They will find each other. If you've been with me from the first flash to this last word, thank you. We started in a ballroom and ended in a quiet room with a lamp and a hem. That's how most truths travel, big noise, then small work. If this is your story, if you've been mocked for walking into a room wearing something simple, if someone took what you built and tried to put their name on it, if you have a signature nobody has seen yet, here's my hand, metaphorically, across this screen. Keep your proof. Screenshots, dates, copies. Facts are oxygen when lies try to fill the room. Find your Ms. Whittaker, the elder who will pour you tea and hand you a folder with your name spelled right. Don't burn down your own house to prove you can light a match. Open the curtains. Let people see. Make a fund if you can. If you can't, make a promise. One person helped is a win. Speak when the light is right. You'll know it. Your hands will stop shaking and start pointing. Forgive if and when it helps you breathe. Not before. Not because anyone told you to, because you chose it. And for anyone who ever had the urge to make someone small so you could feel big, catch yourself. Ask why. Go fix the part of you that needs to steal a name to wear a crown. It's heavy. It will slip. You will drop it. Build your own and it will fit without pins. We end where we began, in a room, with a dress telling a story. Only this time, the story isn't about exposure and shock. It's about repair. About right names in right places. About a woman in a slate blue dress who stood up without screaming and won without smashing. There's a line I write inside my own heart when I'm scared I'll forget. Revenge by light. Credit by thread. Justice by hand. If you need it, take it. Stitch it into your day.